Nothing has stopped working. Processes still run, transactions still clear, decisions still produce outcomes. From a distance, the system looks intact. There is no interruption, no visible delay, no broad failure that would justify attention. What has changed is not whether things resolve, it is how consistently they do. The same inputs no longer produce the same resolution every time. Not because the inputs are wrong, not because the process has failed, and not because someone intervened visibly. Resolution still occurs. It just does not arrive evenly. Some actions move through without friction, others hesitate, others clear partially, others appear to resolve, then quietly unwind. Nothing about this announces itself as a problem. There is no error message, no rejection, no explicit refusal. From the outside, the system remains responsive, but responsiveness is no longer uniform. This is not disorder, it is selectivity. Selectivity does not require explanation to exist. It does not need to be named. It does not need to be justified. It only needs to persist, and it has. At first, uneven resolution feels incidental. One delay is ignored. One irregular outcome is attributed to timing. One exception is dismissed as noise. The assumption is that the next action will behave normally. Often it does. That inconsistency is what makes the change difficult to locate. If nothing resolved, the system would appear broken. If everything slowed, the shift would be measurable. But when resolution remains available, just not evenly applied, the system retains the appearance of normal function. This is how the condition embeds. Participants do not stop acting. They do not withdraw. They do not confront the process. They adapt quietly, locally, without agreement. They notice that some forms pass more easily than others, that certain approaches clear more reliably, and that certain timings feel smoother. They do not need to know why. They only need to remember what worked last time. Over time, behavior reorganizes around response, not because response is predictable, but because unpredictability is directional. Some things resolve more often, some resolve less often, some resolve only under specific conditions that are never stated. This is enough. When resolution becomes selective, the system does not need to impose constraint. Constraint emerges through repetition. No one is told to change behavior, no rule is published, no policy is enforced. Yet actions begin to converge, not toward agreement, toward compatibility. Compatibility here does not mean correctness, it means fit. Actions that fit the environment resolve smoothly, actions that stretch it do not fail. They linger. Lingering is not punishment, it is not escalation, it is not consequence, it is simply non-priority. The system continues operating while deciding nothing explicitly. This is what makes the condition stable. Uneven resolution does not provoke reaction because nothing has been denied. Everything still clears eventually, just not in the same way, not at the same speed, not with the same certainty. Because of this, no single participant can point to the change. There is no moment of transition to reference, no before and after comparison that holds consistently. The environment becomes experiential rather than definitional. You learn how it behaves by moving through it. The more you move through it, the less you expect uniform outcomes. Expectation adjusts first. Interpretation follows later, if at all. Most of the time, interpretation never arrives. It isn't required. The system does not ask to be understood. It only asks to be navigated. This is why uneven resolution does not feel dramatic. Drama requires contrast. It requires violation. It requires something clearly going wrong. Here, nothing is clearly wrong. Resolution still happens. Processes still function. Outcomes still occur. What changes is reliability. But reliability does not disappear. It fragments. Some areas remain stable. Some fluctuate, some feel intermittently accessible. Because nothing is uniformly inaccessible, the system avoids triggering resistance. Because nothing is uniformly reliable, the system avoids anchoring expectation. Participants learn not to assume. They do not become alarmed, they become cautious. Caution does not require fear, it requires experience. Experience teaches that outcomes vary, that resolution is conditional, that persistence matters more than clarity. This produces a different kind of engagement, not urgent, not hesitant, adaptive. Participants continue to act, but with more optionality. They prepare for delay, they expect revision, they treat outcomes as provisional. This does not slow the system, it keeps it moving. Movement persists because nothing forces a stop. The absence of a stop is important. A system that blocks generates reaction. A system that filters generates adjustment. Filtering is quieter, more durable, harder to oppose, because filtering does not say no. It says later, or differently, or elsewhere, and often that is enough. When resolution is selective, meaning becomes thinner, not absent, but lighter. Outcomes no longer settle interpretation, they merely update it. You do not conclude, you revise. This is not confusion, it is accommodation. Accommodation becomes the default posture. Participants do not look for finality, they look for clearance. Clearance does not imply endorsement, it implies passage. Passing through becomes more important than arriving. This shifts attention away from outcomes and toward process. Not because process is valued, but because process is where variability is felt. You learn which steps slow, which steps glide, which steps loop. You do not ask why. Why does not help navigation. The system does not reward understanding, it rewards alignment. Alignment here does not mean agreement, it means compatibility with current conditions. Conditions are not announced, they are inferred. Inference replaces explanation, but inference remains shallow. No one builds a theory, no one maps the whole system. They do not need to. Local navigation is sufficient. This is how the condition sustains itself. Uneven resolution trains behavior without instruction. It does not need enforcement, it does not need persuasion, it does not need urgency. It only needs consistency at the level of response. Even if response is inconsistent globally, local patterns are enough. Those patterns do not need to be shared. They propagate individually. Each participant adjusts independently. No coordination is required. Over time, this produces convergence, not toward a goal, toward survivability. Actions that resolve reliably are repeated. Actions that hesitate are modified. Actions that linger too long are avoided when possible. No one is excluded. No one is corrected. The system does not judge. It filters. Filtering does not feel like control. It feels like environment. And environments shape behavior more effectively than rules, because environments do not argue, they simply respond. This is why the current condition does not escalate. Escalation requires accumulation. Accumulation requires blockage. Here, nothing blocks. Resolution continues, movement continues, adjustment continues. Pressure does not build, it circulates. Circulation prevents rupture. Uneven resolution spreads load across time instead of concentrating it. When something does not resolve cleanly, it does not stop. It continues elsewhere, later, differently. This redistribution prevents focal stress. No single point bears responsibility for failure, because nothing fails conclusively. Everything is provisional. Provisional systems are difficult to oppose. There is no clear position to resist, no outcome to reverse, no decision to challenge, only ongoing process. And process absorbs attention without demanding it. Over time, participants stop noticing the unevenness, not because it disappears, because it becomes expected. Expectation is the final stabilizer. Once uneven resolution is expected, it no longer registers as an anomaly. It becomes texture. Texture does not provoke reaction, it frames experience. You stop asking whether something should have resolved differently. You assume variation, you assume delay, you assume revision, not pessimistically, practically. This does not reduce participation, it sustains it. Because participation is no longer tied to outcome, it is tied to continuation. As long as movement is possible, engagement remains. Even if resolution is partial, even if it is temporary, even if it must be revisited. Nothing demands closure. Closure is no longer the standard. The system does not require conclusions. It tolerates recurrence. This is why nothing feels unfinished, even when nothing feels complete. The absence of finality does not register as lack, it registers as normal. This normalization is the condition, not a phase, not a transition, not a warning. An operating environment, one where resolution still exists but does not behave evenly and does not need to. Nothing about this requires attention. It does not ask to be fixed. It does not ask to be interpreted. It does not point forward. It simply continues. And in continuing, it trains acceptance. Not consciously, not ideologically, procedurally. This is how the system now behaves. Quietly, selectively, without explanation. And because nothing is visibly wrong, nothing needs to happen next.